guys, it's Kim Howerton. Nice to be here with you. We are live, and hopefully this week goes better. I actually set up the studio here instead of just coming to you from my sofa. Maybe that means the lights won't go out. Maybe things will be a little better. We'll see. It is, as I am doing this live, it is December 7th. So, yeah, so that happened. And I don't know what's going on. I've been basically feeling for the past, well, I should say my whole life, but especially strongly recently. I'm like, I just want to watch like movies and sit on the sofa and go for some walks. I don't really want to put on real clothes or get dressed up or do anything or really see anybody. That isn't my family. I don't know. How are you guys feeling in the world? Are you guys feeling a little bit like taking a holiday break? I kind of do. Anyway, so what I tried cooking a gingerbread recipe today. Like I was making one up. It did not go well. Went in the garbage. Yeah, not really. And then I realized I like gingerbread kinda, but I don't think it's my favorite, which is weird because I like ginger and I like pumpkin bread. I don't know. How do you guys feel about gingerbread? I'm not entirely sure. No one has made a comment yet, so I have no idea what. Are you guys watching? What's happening? Oh, there we go. Yeah, I've been in PJs all day. Say, Purple Lady, Texas. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. I'm not the only one who wants to wear my PJs all day. I did wear a nice sweater today. There's a nice sweater going on. I won't show you the pants. So I am wearing pants. They're just not fancy. Yeah, man, kind of a not great experiment in the kitchen. You got to have those days. And yeah. Hey, Amy doesn't care for gingerbread either, but Kathy loves it. I think it's a balance. Like it's not like I don't like gingerbread. It's just like I was thinking about it today as I was contemplating making one, and I thought I usually end up making pumpkin bread. And what's really the difference? Really, really? I mean, flavor-wise, right? It's just a subtle shift. Anyway, so yeah. What else is going on? I am trying to finish a video that I was going to do for Hanukkah, but Hanukkah is over as of yesterday. And, you give me a 7-night holiday, 8-day holiday, and I still procrastinate. Although I didn't start the video until the end of the week. But Purple Lady said that Keto Chow just introduced gingerbread today. So there you go. That will be a great baking thing. Jamie says she's looking forward to the reset. I'm so happy to have you with me so what Jamie's talking about is the beginning of January, my program Keto Unstuck starts, and I am accepting members to it. And it is a 12-week program to unstick what is stuck and reset your keto experience. I mean, let's talk about it. There are really two reasons, right, that we don't succeed in our health goals. Two main reasons. Who wants to guess what they are? Comment below. I'll just start talking about them. You can see if you can beat me. The first one is you don't know what to do. The second one is you know what to do, but you're not doing it. Those are kind of the basics, right? So those are both covered. And so the thing, you see these lists a lot from people. I did when I was stuck on keto, when I was not having the results I wanted, when I was stalled. No one is lazy. I don't believe people don't lose weight because they're lazy, Jennifer. I don't think so. I think if you're exhibiting laziness, there's something underneath it, right? Like it's not an elemental thing. I don't believe people are lazy. I believe people have habits or behaviors, but underneath it all, I think we're all trying. So I would see these people put up these lists like these are the 7 reasons your keto is not succeeding. And it was always things where I'm like, I'm doing all those things. And I don't know. This is more my personality. But I always felt like a big middle finger to those people putting those lists up. Like, I'm doing those things. Could you give me something useful? That's not doing it. I know I'm not eating seed oils. No, I'm not. Blah, 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 blah. I'm not doing those things. Could you give me something useful? So that's how the Keto Unstuck program happened. I was like, I have to find the useful things. Anyway. Hey guys. Jamie said I have found calories do matter on some level. Absolutely they do. They do. They exist. They're a unit of measure. So they, to say they don't matter at all in any circumstances would be incorrect. Andrea says, can eating the same thing all the time make you stuck? Generally not if you're eating the right things all the time. Lori said, how do I join the January group? Lori, I'll put a link to the group in the notes after the live, but it is a paid program. So just so you know, it is a program, not just a group, but I will put the link up for people to join. It's very effective. We always have somebody who loses just a crazy amount of weight during it, and then other people are just like, I just figured out all this stuff I didn't know, and now I know how to do this, and now I know how to be successful, and it's amazing. So I'm happy about that. I also offer a money back guarantee because I want you, if you didn't learn anything useful in the program, well, I don't want to take your money. Save that for something else. I want to earn my keep. All right. So wait, Andrew, I was answering your question. Can eating the same thing? Well, I think if you're eating the same things and the things that you're eating are not the right things, then sure. But you need to so some variety is good, but they actually do show that a lot of people who eat sort of in a cyclical pattern, eat the same things regularly, rinse and repeat kind of meals, they actually do very, very well. They're perhaps more successful. Wow, I just sounded like Marva Rose for a minute. Perhaps more successful than people that switch it up constantly. Let's see. I got a question here. Kim, join us. Jamie says I will be vacationing right in the middle. Will that be a problem? No, it won't. I tend to. Well, one is you have lifetime access to the program, right? To the lesson. So if you have to take a week break, take a week break. The other thing is it's not that kind of program where, like, if you have to I teach you how to take a week off, right? So if you need to take a week off, you can know how to do it without it totally derailing you. Disrailing? No, that's not a word. Selena says, I switched up my fat sources. I took out cheese and cream cheese, swapped them for olive oil and more avocado, and lowered your cholesterol by 5 points. All right, good to go. Good to go. I think some people's bodies respond better to different food sources. And, one of the things that I find as an example, I had today for lunch, I had a sort of a barbecue chicken pizza. I had these cauliflower based, like truly cauliflower, not, sometimes it says cauliflower, but they just wave some cauliflower out, but like truly a cauliflower based crust in the freezer. I took one of those out. I threw a little barbecue sauce on it, some cheese and some chicken. And I noticed I like cheese. Cheese is delicious. Cheese is very tasty. I was like, I don't feel as satiated as I want to feel after this meal. Even though it had way more calories and fat than maybe some of my other meals. And I think for me, cheese usually doesn't quite do it for me. So there's satiation is a big thing in your food choices, I think. Also, things like avocado is very high in fiber, which is good for some people and not good for some people. And so it's good to learn what your body likes now, which may be different than what it liked before, and on and on and on. Tracy said, made it through Turkey Day and Hanukkah without weight gain. Didn't stay perfectly keto, but used time restricted eating. All right. So yeah, I think there's all sorts of ways to approach the holidays. I think expecting perfection of yourself is always iffy. That's not to say that you should expect a lollapalooza of eating either. I think going into things with your eyes open and a plan and eating mindfully, all that. My first 2 years of keto, I really couldn't step off the path, right? I had to have blinders on about things. I just couldn't have a bite of this. I couldn't do that. It just wasn't going to work for me emotionally, and it wasn't going to work for me mentally. And then I reached a point where I felt really secure, right? I felt secure in my food choices. I felt secure in my ability to say no to things and yes to things and not to fall down a hill when I took a step off the path. And then I was able to make other choices. So I think life can change like that. But I do think that if, knowing your boundaries going into any holiday season is super important. Um, Kim asked, can you do keto unstuck on carnivore? And then Susan answered her, yeah, you can. It's not, you don't have to follow a specific meal plan. It's just an approach. Susan says, I am a very boring eater. I will get creative for special occasions, but I prefer to stick to predictable, easy meals. Yep, absolutely. Kristen says, what are your thoughts on natural thyroid hormones versus synthetic for hypothyroidism? My doctor says natural hormones are not reliable. I would say to your doctor, welcome to the modern medical age, because they're wrong. I prefer natural desiccated thyroid hormones. They are just as reliable as synthetic and better, in my opinion, and seem to have better results. I'll give you an example. So recently well, not that recently anymore, but there was in the past few years, months, sometime. Has anyone else lost track of time? I can't keep track of time. But there was, in my recent memory, a recall on a natural desiccated thyroid hormone. I think it was Armor. It might have been Nature Throid. I think it was Nature Throid. And the reason was they regularly test it to make sure it's within parameters. Sorry, nose itch. Within parameters, so it has the effective dose within the appropriate parameters. And it was like 1% below what the parameter, like there's a little bit of a wiggle room, but it was like 1% out of it, and they recalled it. So they're actually checking on that. It's actually testing in relatively in range. And when it's tested even slightly out of range, in terms of, you'd be getting 90% of the dose instead of 100% of the dose, was the example, right? Something like that. It actually was enough of a problem to them in terms of their quality control that they recalled the medicine to fix whatever was going on, that it was under fueled. And so, yeah. So when natural desiccated thyroid first came out, it was more inconsistent, right? Because it came out before there was any synthetic. I mean, it's the original thyroid hormone. And so there were probably early on, it was maybe a little inconsistent. But that's not a concern at this time. It's old news. Jamie, usually if there's a problem, it might be on your end. So you might want to restart your computer or refresh your browser or something like that. Nancy said, I made a chicken crust pizza, no carbs, all protein, top as you wish, very filling and satisfying. Yeah, I do chicken crust a lot. I literally was like, I don't even really want, oh no, Selena says for her too. Well, okay, sorry guys. I usually just don't want, I often, wow, I can't speak. I usually don't mind the effort of cooking a crust, but it's sometimes nice to have something in the freezer to grab. So anyway, I'm still in my maintenance phase. Actually, doing a bit of a reverse right now. I would like to get my base calories up a little bit more before I hit my next cut. And so I'm contemplating another one in the winter. it's the winter now, but like the early new year. But for now, I'm holding steady on my last weight loss. I am 2.3-ish pounds higher than my lowest low, which is going to happen on a reverse. You gain a little bit of weight. So the weight goes. It's not usually a lot of fat. So I do those things in a controlled fashion. So for those that follow me, they may know, but you might not know, that I do periodized fat loss for myself and for my clients. So that would be periods where you're intentionally focused on fat loss, and then periods where you're in a maintenance phase where you could look at it like you're practicing maintenance, some periods where you're in a reverse, where you're slowly increasing your food intake to raise, hopefully your base caloric allowable intake, your base metabolic rate, your ability to be really nourished. So I go through these cycles, and it's worked really well for me. And I now really encourage people to do that. When I first started on keto, I'm just going to keep talking until people have questions. Feel free to type questions in. When I first started on keto, I didn't take this cyclical approach, and I just sort of went for it and tried to lose body fat on just a direct line. And then it was less successful ultimately over time than taking this more periodized approach, in my opinion, both mentally, physically, and just in terms of learning to live a long-term healthy lifestyle. So I'm really happy about the way that I live these days for the most part. Jamie said, will it help with insulin resistance? Absolutely. So insulin resistance is, the state of your body not being able to, something like this, Kim, that seems obvious. Your body isn't able to manage your insulin level well. And that's due to a variety of things, one of which is how much body fat you have compared to how much body fat you might be able to carry. What's your fat max kind of, and as you drop that, insulin resistance usually improves as well. Tracy said recent MD visit revealed moderate oxalic crystals in urine. Besides removing spinach and drinking more water, what else should I take out of my diet? So oxalic crystals are going to be things that are high in oxalic acid. So oxalates, those are especially high in almonds. Rhubarb is crazy high, but people usually aren't eating a ton of rhubarb. If you go to Sally Norton, Norton, Sally Norton online, just Google Sally Norton. You should probably come up with her, or Sally Norton oxalates. She has a food list. She specializes in oxalates. So she has a food list about what foods are high in oxalates so that you can look at moderating those. So she's a great resource for that. Amy said, what are my thoughts on nitrates in foods like salami? I'm not super concerned about nitrates, to be perfectly honest. I don't think they're a big deal. Selena said, which macros, carbs, fat, protein do you lower when you are in a fat loss mode? It kind of depends. So what I usually say is get a baseline about what you are doing. The majority of people do well. Okay, so most people that I work with are already low carb, right? So most people coming to me are already keto, are already low carb. It's very rare. It's like 1% of the people coming into my program who are eating too many carbs. That's not to say that's 1% of the population in general, right? It's just that most of the people have already tried the carb lever by the time they get to me. So I usually don't, personally, I don't have to lower most people's carbs unless they're having binge problems. Then we have to take care of the binge problem. But it's not that they, like, when they're eating the way they think they should, they're eating too many carbs. That's rarely it. It's usually, again, that's not to say that in the general population this is true. This is just true of people who end up entering my programs. They're already pretty seriously keto. So then we're looking at fat and protein as what's going on. And I would say on average, I'm raising people's protein and lowering people's fat, but that is a blanket statement. It depends where they're starting from. But for the most part, like, I can give you an example. I can tell you what I do. And I would say this matches with 60% of people that come into my program, maybe even 70. When I'm in a fat loss phase, my protein either stays the same or goes up very slightly because I already eat a fairly high protein diet. And then but I sometimes it goes up a little bit. And then my fat comes down quite a bit. For that was what works best for me. Other people, it's more of a balance, and so we try to find what works for them. But if I were to take a survey of everyone in any program that I've done in the past 2 years, the majority of people from where they were do better in a fat loss phase, eating less fat, eating a good amount or more protein, and keeping the carbs, fairly low to reasonable, works best for most people. That's not to say that works for everybody. So I don't like to just be like everybody's eating too much fat if you're trying to lose weight. That's not you have to kind of get a baseline what's going on, because there's this thing called Keto AF, which stands for keto animal foods, and there are people that eat they eat twice as much fat as protein, and a lot for these people, they see success when nothing else works for them. So I don't think it's one size fits all. I think that the first phase of keto is really about healing a lot of metabolic damage. And so a higher fat ratio during that phase can be vital, can be crucial for gaining control of your hunger, getting your hormones in a better place. All sorts of really important things can happen when you raise the fat macro, lower the carbs, and get an appropriate amount of protein. But when people have kind of dealt with that first phase of keto, and then they're on it's like flatline, dead in the water, no progress, say more often than not, it's the fat macro that might need to come down for those people. That being said, I get a lot of people who just are chronic dieters. So when I said 70%, when I was talking earlier, that's of the people that this is the right approach. So there's also the problem that a lot of people that come to me have been eating like 1,100, 1,200 calories for years on end, and they're chronic dieters, and we need to get their maintenance bumped up, right? So just like I'm doing, there was a point of time at which I was eating 1,400 calories regular, and then now my maintenance, I'm eating 1,900 calories and not gaining any significant weight. So you can change your baseline over time if you apply the right levers. So working with people to raise that baseline, so then when I do diet, now I lose body fat at caloric intake, whereas before I would maintain on that caloric intake, even though I'm a smaller person, which is kind of crazy. So there are things you can do that will make you more successful long term, like reverse dieting. Selena says, do I add any new micronutrients to help your body adjust to lowered fat? I don't. I do actually find some people in any transition on a low carb diet might need to pay extra attention to electrolytes, but that's just a intermittent kind of thing. I never lower the fat so much that we risk running into nutrient absorption issues. So if you eat too low fat a diet, you can run into issues because things like vitamin K, D, E, those are fat soluble vitamins. Where is it K? Certainly D, where your fat soluble vitamins are going to require fat. And if your fat goes too low, you're going to be challenged. Tracy said, I'm sad and keto AF means keto animal foods. Now I'm not getting the mug now. It doesn't only mean that. So keto AF might mean keto as what you might think the F stands for. But there is something called keto AF that stands for keto animal foods. It's like, you might meet two people with the same initials. Doesn't mean they have the exact same name. All right. All righty. Thanks, Selena. And whenever I'm on live, I'm suddenly like, I suddenly doubt everything I know in the world. Lori says, I can't seem to get my doctor on board. Believe I have all the markings of hyperthyroidism, but have had it so long. Started as a teen. My little extra light support just went out. My eyes look really light today. What is that? I don't know. This is not the same light that went out last week, though. I just think it lost. It was like it's like a. I'm still pretty well lit. I think we're okay. So. Oh, thanks, Paula. Paula says, like the video, people. Yeah, I always forget. I'm very bad at self-promotion. Everybody like the video. Lori said, okay, so Lori, you want to get and you can order these yourself in most states, by the way. You're going to want to get a TSH, a free T4, a free T3, a reverse T3, a TPO, and a TGB. Those are the tests you want to get. And like, I think that panel of tests is like $50 on many of the order yourself sites. So you are very able to order those tests for yourself in most states, not all states. Rebecca says, theoretically, if I stay fat adapted, does the fat eventually reduce in the areas like love handles? I'm excluding excess skin. So simply staying fat adapted will not reduce your body fat. It will mean that you are better able to use fat as a fuel source. So that's great. But you still need, these lights are just driving me crazy. But you still need to lose body fat. You still need to convince your body that it wants to use that body fat for something other than storage. And so, generally speaking, that's going to mean that you need to either do things that liberate more body fat or make your body fat be needed for energy. So generally speaking, that might mean if you're in a place where you're fat adapted, things are going well, you're gonna probably need to reduce the amount of food intake in general. So yeah, theoretically, no. Just being fat adapted, it's a fabulous thing metabolically, but it's not just getting fat adapted is not how you lose body fat. But being fat adapted makes it easier for most of us to lose body fat because we have better satiety, we feel better, we have better energy, we can do things like eat less and not feel crazy. And so all of that can be very helpful. So being fat adapted also, while you're supremely insulin resistant, it's very challenging to be fat adapted. So being able to get fat adapted is a good marker that you're improving your metabolic health. And being healthier, improving your metabolic health is going to absolutely put you in a better spot to be able to reduce body fat. But you're going to have to do things to liberate more body fat. It's a balance, right? So how much body fat, how much energy you take in. I mean, I'm not saying calories in, calories out. That is just a very misunderstood phrase. So it's not a very helpful phrase. But it is like, if you're replacing all the fat, so your body fat is trying to be used for energy and you're replacing that with what you're eating, you're just staying level. You're staying fat adapted, but you're staying level. If you want to see some of those love handles, the fat on your body go, you have to change the balance. Kim says, do you ever do cocktails? I really like a few brunches a month. I don't drink. I mean, I will. It's not like I won't, but I drink like twice a year if I drink, maybe on vacation, maybe. So it's something that I have no problem saying no to a cocktail most of the time. So it's not really one of my things. But I get that it's something for people that they're used to doing it. It's not the best for fat loss. I'm just going to say it. And so I usually say, if you're in a fat loss phase, you might want to skip it. But you don't have to spend your whole life in a fat loss phase. It's a few months at a time that you're in a fat loss phase. And you're like, I'm in maintenance now. Maybe I'll have a few cocktails. Then you go back to your fat loss phase. And then you're not going to have cocktails for a while, or you're going to make them very rare. So I usually just say like try and mix it up that way. Angie says, I have had a hard time eating Too many pecans and Lily's chocolate chips. Yeah, you got to measure those suckers out. I do not. So I have many food rules that help me because I am a chronic overeater if I don't. One of them is I don't eat nuts. This don't take anyone this don't take this one. I don't eat things out of my hand, especially things like nuts. I don't take a handful of nuts and eat them. If I'm gonna have nuts, I have them in a salad or on some yogurt, like they're in a dish. I don't snack. Um, if I'm having a dessert, I probably wouldn't have nuts and chocolate chips because I would want way more than are good for me. I might chop up some nuts and chocolate chips and throw them on some, you know, protein ice cream or something, but I want more. Like I like volume, and so I try and moderate that kind of thing. So, but if you know something's a problem for you, you have to stop eating it. Or find a way that you can have those things in a way that aren't a problem for you. Um, Tracy says, check out Have Butter Will Travel. Last week's live was about cocktails. Well, that's fabulous. Most hard alcohols are zero carb. Hard alcohols are zero carb unless they add sugar back in, right? If flavors or sugar back in, just the hard alcohol itself, like rum or vodka or whatever, is zero carb. But alcohol will shut down fat burning while your body's metabolizing it. So you don't necessarily want to do that too often. Um, Rachel says, how do you typically help counsel those who are triggered to binge when they are tracking food or when weighing themselves? That is a really good question, Rachel, because it can be super challenging for people. And I generally think people who are in that boat will do much better with one on one counseling or coaching rather than doing a group program. So I actually say in my group program now, which I've learned, I didn't say that this at the beginning. In this last round, I was like, oh, I should say this. It says when you join, if you're somebody that can't handle tracking or are still in an active binge issue, that we should not have you enroll. We should talk instead because I think that tracking and weighing yourself and getting those metrics are super important if you want to manage your own body. But at the same time, if you know those things are a huge trigger for you, we have to work on those triggers before we can work on anything else. And so, what I would say is, um, if you're someone that is super challenged by weighing yourself or measuring your food or tracking your food, I would work on those issues first with some help. And how do I do that? I would say we have to get you out of the dieting mentality. I think like I'm fine with doing like periods of fat loss, right? But I want to cure the world of diet brain at the same time because when we live in this idea, I don't know, I started when I was maybe 8, this idea that I was a good person if I was dieting. I was a slothful, lazy, undisciplined person when I wasn't. And my only two speeds were binge or restrict. That was all I had. And so it was either like food lollapalooza or or I'm not eating. And I think that we have to get out of that. I think you have to get into a place where you feel nourished, where you feel taken care of, where your relationship with food gets better, where you're not focused on losing weight, where if you lose weight, whatever, but it's not your goal. You're simply trying to eat the right foods and get a good relationship with food going, get a good relationship with reality going. Find the things that trigger you and work on those issues and get help to work on those things before you do something like undertake serious fat loss. Now, if you have significant health problems because of the way that you're eating, absolutely work on those. But I would say you kind of have to, at certain points, release your attachment to what you weigh so that you can get through that, get to the other side. And for a lot of people, they then can start to look at tracking food or restricting in some way. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to um, track every morsel, but you have to be like, you have to be conscious around food, right? So it might look like You eat this, you portion size, or you meal prep, or you measure but you don't track, right? Like, so you have to start getting conscious around food and macros and those kinds of things, but one step at a time. And if you're somebody that, when you start to track, when you're paying attention to these things, you live in like binge land, then I would say maybe now is not the time to restrict in any significant fashion. Duxand says, I'm doing great in ketosis over a year, down 80 pounds. Can't seem to fast long. So I haven't incorporated that in my journey. People make me feel ashamed of that, or that I'm not getting healthy. I would say, geez, guys, I am saucy today. I was gonna make a finger gesture, but I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna do it under the desk. I would tell those people to F off, is what I would say. Don't let people make you feel bad. Not everyone can fast. Like, that's what they're doing. Like, whatever. Not everyone needs to fast. It does not have to be part of your journey. I do think, like, some time restricted eating, I do think it's important to not eat while you're sleeping. Important. Choking hazards, right? I think it's important to give your digestive system a little break overnight. But you really don't need to do long fasting if it doesn't work for you. And if people are trying to shame you for that, they can go somewhere else. That's what I'm saying. You lost 80 pounds. You've lost 80 pounds. Making faces at them. Hey, Ellen. Grateful Keto said, throughout the day, I drink a water that is flavored with stevia. Will that AF? So if you're talking about keto animal foods, stevia is a plant food. And so I would say most people doing carnivore find they give up sweeteners. So if that's what you're asking me. So are you asking if stevia will spike your insulin? Hold on. Now I have to. So stevia is a sweetener, for those who didn't know that. I think spike is a significant word. It might have a raise of your insulin. The thing about insulin is, even if I just spit at the camera. Sorry about that. If I just sat here thinking about my favorite sweet dessert, my insulin will start to go up. Okay. I didn't taste it. I didn't smell it. I didn't eat it. But my body is thinking, she's thinking about XYZ. She might be eating XYZ soon. We should probably get ready for XYZ. And so my insulin will start to drift up a little bit. So for some people, certainly tasting something that tastes sweet can cause that little drift. I don't know that little bit of a drift is a problem. I'm just going to say it. So what I would say is the best way you can know if you do better without sipping on Zevia sweetened seltzers is take them out for a month. Are you seeing better progress? Do you feel better? Is your fasting insulin level lower? Yes or no? No, then probably not a problem. Jackie said, is this all covered in the Unstuck program? Yeah, I talk all about it. All about all this stuff. Kim says, I've used lots of stevia in the last 3 years. When I started my HGB, is that, you mean your A1C? Is 5.1 and C peptide is 1.3. Yeah, so those are very healthy. Sounded great. There is stevia in this cup. I think it's a Zevia in here. So absolutely, I think you can include sweeteners in your, I can include sweeteners in my fat loss, and maybe many people can as well. That being said, I'm not super concerned about the cephalic insulin response phase. It's not the same as a a significant insulin response. It is a minor one. Duxon said, "Do I eat strict carnivore? I do not. I eat a high vegetable, low carb diet these days. I have been carnivore at times, but at this time, I would say I am a low carber, uh, heavy vegetable user. How is that different from ketovore? Okay, so I'll go through. So there's carnivore, which is only animal foods. So how you define that? Some people are like very narrow, they only eat beef, but carnivore as a whole is any animal foods are included in carnivore, but generally speaking, they don't do things like sweetener, other types of foods, vegetables. But a lot of people doing carnivore like have little tolerances, like they're okay with some spices, they're okay maybe with coffee. So, but that's kind of the carnivore. Then well, from there we go carnivore-ish. So that's somebody who maybe is 97% carnivore, but every once in a while they have a pickle, right? Like a little something, or they include like they'll use a little vinegar in their cooking, or they they won't so strict carnivore, carnivore-ish, it's just like they'll use some cilantro on top of their dinner or herbed butter or whatever. So little bits of vegetable matter might be getting into their diet, but it's very minor. Then we move from there to ketovore, which is kind of a combination of keto and carnivore, which is, I hear people saying it's sort of keeping the carb grams more like 10 total carbs a day. So you can include things like onions, with your steak, or maybe you might have a little bit of spinach with your steak, or you might throw some bell peppers in with your scramble, but your carbs per day, your total carbs are going to be still under, probably about 10 grams. Then we go to keto. Keto, kind of depending on who you ask, the idea is most people sort of beginner keto will be 20 total carbs or under a day. But then some people learn they have a better carb tolerance. Maybe they're an athlete, maybe they're a very large man, they have a lot of muscle mass. They may tolerate closer to 50 grams of total carbs a day. But that's keto, right? Then we start going above that and we're in more just the low carb territory. And low carb, I would state, is anywhere from 50 to 100. Some people push that to 150 grams of total carbs in a day. That's still considered low carb compared to really all the rest of the nation that eats a lot more carbs than that. But I usually put that, like, it depends on your size, how much muscle mass you have, where you draw your boundaries. But those are kind of the different segments of in terms of carb restriction. So I think that cover all the different segments. And then within that, there's different things like some people eat higher protein, lower fat. Some people eat higher fat, lower protein. Some people, so you can also modulate that. But in terms of just the sort of carb spectrum, I think that covered everything I can think of. All right. Any other questions? So yeah, I did. So when I first started keto, I was strict 20 grams and under a day. Then there was a period of time I went carnivore, sweetener free, dairy free, all those things. So I've done all the things. Now in the past year or so, for the most part, I've settled into what I call high vegetable, low carb, which is that I might consume up to 50 grams of total carbs a day from, being just pretty liberal with my tolerance of vegetables, because I'm insulin sensitive. My fasting insulin is like well under 6. My my C-peptide is like 1.4 last time I checked. My blood sugar is in really good range. I have great response to things. So now I include a little more fruit, a little more veg. I don't think everyone can tolerate that, but if you can and you want to, why not? And so my last 35 pounds I've lost while eating a fairly high vegetable intake. Amy, Deb says, do I eat salads every day? I was until the weather changed and I've had soup a few nights instead of salad. I would say I eat salads 9 days out of 10, but that might be a little lower, maybe 8 days out of 10 in the winter. But I love a good salad. Amy says, do I think organ meats are absolutely necessary? No, I don't actually. And it depends if you have nutrient deficiencies and you need to fill those things in, or not. So, but I know a lot of people that do very well without organ meats. Dachshund says, do I stay in ketosis eating that way? Most of the time I am in ketosis, like a low level of ketosis, probably a 0.3, 0.4 in terms of my beta hydroxybutyrate. So I'm definitely there, but I'm not, I don't aim for any, just the fact that I'm showing some ketones just shows that I'm fairly low insulin, producing. Kathy says, I'm in a cut and I will be ready to reverse diet by the time you start KU. Should I sign up for the support? We'd love to have you. If you think it will help you, please join us. If you're like, I don't know that I get anything out of it, you probably will, but I'd love to have you. I'll say it that way. But ultimately, if you're like, I'm not challenged at all, everything's going really great, I'm a terrible salesperson. But we'd love to have you, and I'm sure that you might learn something that'll be great for you. So, I missed a question. Hold on. Well, Leslie, I'm happy and looking forward to having you in the program too. Colleen says 0.3 is ketosis. So 0.3 is showing some ketones. And so for me, the Finney and Volek chart sort of identifies the start of ketosis at 0.5 millimolars. However, I really consider showing any ketones to be in ketosis because you're seeing some ketones. So it's just where you draw your boundaries. I don't think ketosis is necessary for everyone. It can be very helpful at different phases, especially early on when you're trying to get fat adapted. I think getting into ketosis can be super important. I don't know that staying in ketosis is essential for everybody. I think there's some flexibility there. Renee says, do you have your tiramisu recipe available? Dr. Barry raves about it and says it's the best he's ever had in his life. Oh, that is very, very sweet. I'm going to try on Saturday to make a video of it. So it's in my holiday cookbook, but I'm going to try and put up a video. And I think it might be on my website already. If not, it will be in the next week. But if you go to kimhowerton.com, you can see, I redid my website recently, so not all the recipes are there, but you can look at the recipes there and see if it's there. But it will be up within a week. Anne says, thoughts on resistant starch? Sure, hold on. So resistant starch is basically a certain type of starch within certain types of vegetables, legumes, potatoes, rice, that is created when the way that they sort of create it is if you with rice and potatoes as an example, when they heat the rice or potatoes and they cook it and they cool it, creates a larger ratio that is what is quote unquote resistant starch. And some people have found that this resistant starch is good for your gut and probiotics and that kind of thing. Prebiotics, I guess. And then it's supposedly not as harmful for blood sugars and things. The issue is that with a lot of these foods, it isn't all converted to resistant starch. It's just a part of it. So these foods will still cause problems for people with blood sugar regulation issues. It's the juice is not worth the squeeze here, people. So it's like, yeah, okay, there might be like a little bit of benefit, but the downside is very high. And so I guess I'm not super into it is my answer. If you want to experiment with resistant starch, that's doing things that like having a tablespoon of potato starch in your soup or something. It's not eating a whole potato. That's gonna raise most people's blood sugar, especially if they have blood sugar issues. So no, I'm not into it. Doxson says, I feel like ketosis has been the key to me no longer binge eating. Absolutely. So, getting fat adapted, super important for a lot of us. It was crucial for me. I used to be a binge eater, getting fat adapted, eating well, eating in a way that nourishes my body, being in ketosis, having a high fat diet, all of that very important for the way that I was able to transition from being a binge eater to not being a binge eater. But long term, life might look different for some people. Joy said, I lost 74 pounds in 14 months doing keto low carb. Was at a stall. So I decided to do a reverse diet for 6 months, up 5 pounds. I plan to cut in January. I still have 40 more pounds to lose. That sounds amazing. I think that's fabulous. I would probably aim for not losing all those 40 pounds in your next cut. I would aim for, let's see. I usually say, uh, so I usually say don't aim for more than about 10% at a time. So if currently you weigh, I'm just making stuff up, Joy. I don't know how much you weigh. So if currently you weigh 200 pounds, 10% of that would be 20 pounds. So in my next cut, I wouldn't aim to lose more than 20 pounds. If you weigh 180, wouldn't aim to lose more than 18 pounds, right? And then do another maintenance period after that, and then do another cut. So you're going to just break that up. It makes life much more livable. Colleen says, thanks, Kim, for your explanation. Can we retake the Unstuck program? Absolutely. 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 PM me. I give people who've taken it before a discount. Tina said, let's say that someone had a Kim Keto Frosty every night at dinner after dinner. Would that be a terrible thing? No, not if you accounted for it in your macro tracking. Larry and Paula both said simultaneously, what is a reverse diet? So you can think about it this way. When we diet, when we're trying to lose body fat, we are generally speaking restricting in some way, right? We're reducing how much we intake. Generally speaking, our caloric intake comes down. Then in a reverse diet, we look at what our average caloric intake is. So we get a reality check. What is our average caloric intake? And then we very slowly begin to eat a little more fat and maybe a little more protein and a little bit more fat, maybe a little more protein, up. And just think about it as like stair steps. And you're maybe 50 calories at a time, just stair stepping your way up to eating more, eating more, eating more, all while trying to not gain very much body fat. So you're doing this in a very measured, slow, incremental approach. And so we're doing that as think of it as reversing your way out of a deficit. And so by doing that, a lot of us have been able to raise that level at which we can maintain our weight. And so being able to eat more while being thinner. It's a winner for me. And so that is a reverse diet. That's what a reverse diet is. It's popular in the bodybuilding community. And so it's an approach that I use as well. A cut is, think about it, you're trying to cut weight. right? Cut is a term from the bodybuilding world. Think of it as a weight loss, a fat loss period, right? A time in which you're trying to lose body fat. Barbara says, why do you think that keto bread isn't good for you if the label says that it has 3 net carbs? I've been eating it and my weight is stable. If you are eating something, you feel good, you function well, your blood markers are good, and you're seeing the success you want, you eat whatever you want. Don't let people tell you what you can and can't eat. But I will say that a lot of keto breads on the market, the sort of net carb amount they say they have is not really the amount of carbs your body thinks they have. There's a lot of tomfoolery that can happen with those numbers. So that's why when I'm eating something like a keto bread, I like to test my blood sugar and make sure it's staying fairly stable and that they're not lying, because a lot of them lie. By omission, maybe they don't mean it, but they're not always 100% truthful on the packaging. So I like to check that out. And then the other thing is some people, hold on. Some people are very sensitive to the things that they put in keto breads, like gluten, like grains and things like that. And so a lot of people avoid those things for health reasons. And so there you go. Joy said, reverse diet, you up your carbs. No, that's not how I do it, Joy. I don't necessarily up your carbs. Because I teach people, generally I teach low carb dieting. And so on the way that I do reverse dieting, I do it more the way that maybe Robert Sykes does it, who's Keto Savage. He's a keto bodybuilder. So generally speaking, with me, people are going to reverse their way up with their fat, not their carbs. But there are absolutely trainers, coaches that are not within the keto low carb space that use the phrase reverse dieting, and they will use carbs because they're a carb based food system coach, right? Whereas a lot of the people that come to me are looking for something that operates within the low carb experience. And so you can absolutely 100% still reverse diet, but you're not going to be relying on carbs for that reverse. You're going to be relying much more on fat, the way that someone might do it in the keto community. Kim says, I stay away from bread because I am afraid of cravings. And that is very, very smart of you, Kim. You do what you think is right for you. Deb says, how many weeks is a reverse diet? It is as many weeks as it needs to be, Deb. So generally speaking, a reverse diet is your track. So you're starting from a low baseline, you're adding a little bit, 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 you're adding a little bit. You just keep going up. And as long as you can keep adding without gaining more weight, more body fat than you want to be adding. I mean, you have to add a little. You'll add a little. You just have more food in your system. You're going to weigh more. It doesn't mean you've added a lot of body fat, but you add a little, add a little. And if you're still seeing that you can keep eating more, keep eating more, keep eating more because you're doing it fairly slowly, it might be a long time. But if you're reversing and you're finding you hit your ceiling, I talk about reversing as being finding your ceiling. What's the point at which you bang your head on the next floor? Okay, we got to stop here. I can't go any higher because I'm going to start to gain weight. You have to stop there, right? So for some people that happens in 4 weeks, and for some people it happens in 14. And so reverse tends to be a choose your own adventure, and you kind of have to see how long it's going to be. Now, from a reverse, at the end of reverse, you're going to head into what would be called like a maintenance period. And generally speaking, how long you're in a maintenance depends on a lot of factors as well. So if I look at my schedule, I might be in a cut, like trying to lose body fat for 24 weeks of the year. Gosh, now I have to do math. But I'd be not in a cut. I'd be either reversing or maintaining for 24, 28 weeks, right? So a little bit longer. So, and actually I probably don't even do 24 in a year. I probably do maybe 20 weeks, right? Like maybe I'll do like an 8 week and an 8 week. So not the majority of time is in either maintenance or the reverse period for me. There you go. I think the general advice is, you can 50-50 it. Julie says, regarding keto, Barbara's question regarding the keto bread, would it be beneficial making homemade keto bread or cloud bread instead? Absolutely. Cloud bread is fabulous. Homemade keto bread is fabulous. There are some good options that you can order, like Julie McClure at Fox Hill Kitchens makes a bread mix. It's very good. But I think cloud bread, I mean, you can do cloud bread every single day. I have no issues with that as long as you can tolerate eggs. Claire says, I have been stuck for about 15 months. I'm looking for the KU class. Absolutely. Happy to have you in there, Claire. Elisa says, looking good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Barbara says, I do keto solely to lose weight. So do you think it's okay to take some pauses like eating carbs once in a while? I cannot answer that on a live stream. I can say, do I think carbs in and of themselves are inherently evil or bad? No. Do I think some people can include carbs on an occasional basis and still see the body fat level they want? Yes. Do I think the types of carbs we choose matter, highly processed versus whole foods? Yes. Do I think that focusing on nutritional health versus just your body fat is important? Yes. So there, all sorts of things. So, in terms of like, is it okay for you to do that? I don't know if it's okay for you to do that. I don't know how triggered you are by carbs. I don't know if you have popcorn once a year and you're fine, or you have popcorn once and it's like 6 months of you picking yourself up off the floor because you want popcorn again. I don't know. But I would say, like, I don't think carbs are inherently evil, and I don't think nobody ever should ever eat a carb ever. I don't think that, but I think that we do have to be mindful about how our body responds to them, how our psyche responds to them, how we respond emotionally, and how how it all works. And I would say, if anything becomes what I think of as a trigger food, that is, you pull the trigger on that and then all hell breaks loose, you might not want to pull that trigger. So, but if you're like, hey, once a year at my grandma's house, I have this one piece of pie and I have that one thing in this one isolated place, is that going to break anybody metabolically? No, it's not. But you have to look at the bigger picture. So I know that was a very long answer to your question, but kind of have to know yourself. And because you're not one of my clients, I don't know you that well yet. So I don't know if it's a problem for you. I would say it's a problem for some people and it's not a problem for others. All right, guys, we're coming up on 6 o'clock. So I'm going to call it a day, and I will see you next Tuesday. And now I've made promises about my tiramisu recipe coming up soon. So we'll try and get that up. Editing those videos takes a while. I'm highly critical of things. So there you go. Well, now I'm committed. All right. All right. I'll just wrap up. Karen, this time seems to be much harder. Yeah, it is harder. So every time you regain the weight and try to lose it again, it's twice as hard to do. It is just unfortunate, but stick with it. You'll find success again. All right. Bye, guys.